Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast. As the owners of Hired Hand website software, we've been developing websites and creating internet marketing strategies for livestock breeders for the past 10 years.
The majority of our customers are involved in the breeding of registered animals, such as Texas longhorns, Highland cattle, horses, and white-tailed deer, where the pedigrees are very important. The From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast examines many of the differences in raising pedigreed livestock for maximum profit. Join us and learn what we're covering today.
On today's episode, I'm joined with Brian and Mary Stahl of Middlecreek Farms in Rockwood, Pennsylvania. The Stahls might be known most recently for breeding M.C. Hangin Tuff, who is the second bull ever and the youngest ever to measure 100 inches tip to tip. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to learn a little bit about your program, but we're also going to talk a lot about bulls and some of the keys to success that you all have found over the years of breeding what seems like bull after bull after bull that just kind of takes the industry by storm. So let's get into it here a little bit. And why don't you just tell us a little bit about your background, how you got involved in the industry, kind of your history there.
Okay, well, first of all, Brian and I both grew up on dairy farms. And when he first called me, set up a date, and I found out that he lived on a farm, my first question to him was, "Do you plan on taking the farm over?" And he said no. And I said, "Okay, I'll go out with you." So, I wouldn't trade growing up on the farm for anything, but we didn't want to be tied down to it and have the struggles like that our parents had with it. So we both had a background as far as a dairy farm, correct? The dairy end of it, but we both obviously had a background in cattle and enjoyed raising them, so we knew we wanted some. And Brian always liked longhorns, and he had a set of them hanging on his bedroom wall, so I decided I would get him one for his birthday. Found 2 longhorn farms in the area. We went to look at them, and of course I picked one at the first farm. He picked one at the second farm. We couldn't agree on one, so we ended up with 2 and bought both. And then later that year, we went out west on a hunting trip in Colorado. And of course, Brian's out hunting. I'm in the local library because I didn't have a phone, doing research on longhorn ranches. Jones Ranch came up, Ron and Joe Jones. Here they were just on the other side of the mountain pass where we were hunting. And of course, we had to go pay them a visit while we were there. And then during our stay, 9/11 happened. And I refused to get on a plane. So I made Brian rent a car and drive home. And we stopped at different longhorn ranches the whole way home, picking up 1 or 2 at each place. And we didn't have a trailer or a truck, but we didn't care. We figured, we'd figure it out somehow. After that, the addiction started. We sold the few beef cattle that we had bought and focused totally on the longhorn cattle.
So if you were kind of making that cross-country trip around 9/11, that would have been back in 2001. Those first 2 that you got locally, what year was that? Do you remember?
That was in the spring of 2001, and then the fall was like September, the hunting trip.
So you went from 0 to a handful pretty quickly then.
We did, yes, absolutely. And we knew nobody in the industry. We knew nothing about longhorns. Had a really good cattle background, but nothing specific about them when we started.
So those first 2 that you picked out where you each liked a different one, did they have similar qualities or did you have 2 very different tastes in animals at that time?
They were similar in some ways, but one herd was definitely more correct and feminine, but they just didn't have the tip to tip in the horn shape.
Okay. So today, let's kind of fast forward to today. Can you give our listeners an overview of Middlecreek Farms and what makes your program unique and stand out?
Well, I would say what makes our program stand out is definitely the size of our cattle. We breed for larger cows. It's no secret that we like big cows. Everywhere we go, our cows seem to tower over most of the other ones at the events. And one example is we sold a heifer to a friend that was going to halter show her. She was real correct, colorful and feminine, but wasn't placing very well. So she asked one judge why, and he replied, she's too extreme. We had big cows when they weren't popular, but now people are trending to larger frame cattle and seem to be more drawn to them.
And do you feel like any of that breeding for size comes from your dairy backgrounds, or is that just something your eye has always gone to and just you just enjoy that type of cattle?
That's just a personal preference of ours.
So you all
you have a large cell if you stay on the larger side and larger frame.
That's a great point. So I feel like you all have a strong reputation for not only, like you said, the big, correct, well-conformed females, but also some of the really great bulls of recent times. Can you share a brief history of kind of how you've taken your program to where it is today, how it's evolved over the years and you've gotten there?
Yeah, from the get-go, we decided to AI our cows so we can use the best genetics. We remember going to our first big sale, seeing a high-dollar cow sell, and we always said we want to produce what they want to buy, the big guys, you know. And over the years, we learned what bulls work with a given cow family. Quickly got to the point where we could raise better cattle than we could afford to buy. We put all our focus on our breeding program from that point on.
What would you say are some of the key milestones or achievements that have really helped shape your success?
Producing MC Super X and him winning our first horn showcase for us was really the start of it all. He really stepped up our program tremendously. He put on tremendous size as well as more horn than we were getting before and put us a few generations ahead. Showed us that if we do selective breeding with specific bulls through AI, that we could produce great animals with our red McCombs later. And then obviously breeding Hangin Tuff was a huge achievement for us. He was setting new horn measurement records, and he was only the second bull ever to cross the 100-inch tip-to-tip mark at the time.
So selling a bull to McCombs is a pretty big accomplishment in itself. Do you feel like that helped put you all kind of on the map, or maybe got a few more heads turning than?
Oh, absolutely. People pay attention when you sell a bull to somebody of that caliber in the business. It gets people talking for sure.
Do you feel like after that happened, you had a lot more folks making inquiries or trying to come to the ranch or visiting your website?
Yes, Rex definitely became more popular and people were wanting offspring out of him. However, we had very small herd and we were trying to build up our breeding programs, so we didn't want to sell very many. So that kind of disappointed people, but people definitely followed our program after that.
Do you feel like you all knew from early on that Super Rex was going to be a big deal, or how to kind of talk to me about his history at your ranch there and everything before you sold him?
Yeah, when he hit the ground, he was just a really big, good-looking bull. We knew we had something there. Obviously, you have to wait on the horn. And we kind of kept in touch with Ron and Joe Jones, and we would look at the Trails magazine every year for the horn showcase results, and we keep close eye on his measurements. When it came time to enter the showcase, we called Ron and said, hey, what do you think about us entering this pool? Do you think he's good enough? And he said, oh, absolutely. Yeah, he's good enough to go. At that point, we figured we'd take the plunge and drive him to Texas and see what we could do with him.
And is that kind of the same path that Hangin Tuff followed, with being noticeable right from the get-go and then having great measurements?
Yeah, he definitely had more of a presence when he was born. He just had that look about him, a good bull look. We knew he was special when he hit the ground.
And so for some folks who might not be familiar, you've referenced the Joneses quite a bit, Ron and Joe. Can you just tell, just very briefly, a little bit about some of the animals that they used in their program that you saw when you were at their ranch that possibly influenced some of your breeding?
Yeah, cows that stood out to us were J.R. Hope and J.R. Treasure at the time. Grand Slam was there at the time, but we weren't able to see him. But those were kind of the two cows that caught our eye there. And we just obviously couldn't afford them, and they weren't for sale. So we chose one heifer we picked the cow Hope. The heifer, it was between her and Treasure's, and we picked Hope's calf, which was J.R. Opus, and that so happened to be the dam of Super X.
It's pretty crazy. Like, those, you guys obviously were making great decisions, when you were planning that out and everything, but it's funny how, it's not funny. It's awesome how it works out though, isn't it?
Yeah. And then people, almost everybody that we talked to about Rex, like his pedigree really stumps them. They're like, well, what made you breed a Super Bowl? Like they're totally like stunned by that. And we're like, well, at the time, he was a really good bull and we liked him, and, she was our best heifer, and it was a no-brainer to put them together.
Do you have anything to add, Brian? Any memories from that whole thing, or anything you'd like to weigh in with?
Genetics, their main genetics went back to Gunman. And Gunman was one of the best bulls in the industry to step up programs. Unfortunately, he died at a young age. But as far as Super Rex, yeah, everybody looked at us and asked us why we put Super Bowl with Opus. And basically, it's just what we liked. It wasn't as much the pedigree as we really liked the look of Super Bowl and his horn shape and everything about him, his color. And we just thought it'd be a good match, and it hit.
Looking for top quality longhorns and a taste of true Texas spirit? Look no further than Cantera Cattle Company. Our passion for longhorns shines at Old Gringo Ranch, where tradition meets excellence. Visit us online at CanteraCattleCompany.com and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok for the latest updates and ranch life fun. Ready to experience it yourself? Schedule your visit by emailing canteracattle@gmail.com. Remember, God is great, longhorns are good, and life is crazy.
Hidden Springs Ranch, located in central North Carolina, is committed to registered Texas Longhorns. From our high-end breeding stock down to our delicious Longhorn beef sticks, check us out at hslonghorns.com or on Instagram at Hidden Springs Ranch. Hidden Springs Ranch, where they're bred to turn heads.
Love what you're hearing? Be sure to check out our Pickup Truck Confessions.
It's a video series where we hop in the truck or rental car and interview a variety of breeders about what drives their passion for their livestock, how they got started in the breed of their choice, marketing tips, and more.
And now, back to the podcast.
Well, I feel like you both have touched on it a little bit already, but let's dig in a little bit more to how else you select and match genetics when aiming to produce your top tier bulls. Or maybe it's not even that you're hoping to get bulls out of those pairings. Maybe you'd prefer a heifer and you just happen to have a bull, but can you dig into that a little deeper?
Yeah. First of all, we don't concentrate on pedigrees as much as other people do. We look more at their individual traits of the cow and the bull themselves. We look for a bull that will help improve a cow's weak points as well as complement her strong traits. Like coming from registered dairy farms, we developed a good eye to pick these traits out and had a good background in matching cows and bulls that would complement each other. And then secondly, we do look at pedigree. This is also a major factor in selecting a mating. It's always good to have a proven, well-known bull to breed with, but that's not our only basis for selection. And then every time through calling your cattle, you learn what cows in your herd will outproduce themselves.
Do you feel like folks are going to have to maybe go back and listen to your answer a few times? Because I feel like it's a lot of folks think it's all about the pedigree, right? It's
Absolutely.
pedigree. So what advice would you give to folks that just can't kind of fathom what you just said?
Well, when you're just breeding pedigree, you have to be careful because, yes, the good traits will show up, but also if there are any bad traits, they will double up as well. And like I said, coming from a dairy business, it was always ingrained in our minds that you don't inbreed, you don't line breed, you always outcross, so that's kind of where we came from. I guess it was the Longhorn industry that kind of introduced us to the line breeding and so forth. For us, it's more of looking what a cow needs and what a bull has to give that cow to make the best animal.
Our first look at an animal is the animal itself and what it looks like, what it's lacking, what benefits it has. That's our first look. And then we go and look at the pedigree and say, okay, great. This pedigree's good, but even if it's a pedigree that we don't recognize, we'll still use that with the confidence that that animal itself, as it stands, will benefit or hurt.
So let's talk a little bit more about those specific traits. So you said you look at what animals have or are lacking, and kind of go from there. Can you dig in more deeply to what specifically you're looking at?
Yeah, well, you're looking for eye appeal. I mean, that first look that you get from a cow or a bull, conformation is top of the list. And then obviously you have your color and good feet. We look for good feet and milking ability. And then we try to do all that without sacrificing horn development or horn growth. And temperament's very important for us as well.
Do you wait until they're various certain ages to do this, or is it talk to me about that timeline a little bit?
We have limited space to keep bulls, so we can only grow out a few each year. It can be a gamble to know which ones are going to be good at early stages of life. So that's another challenge that we deal with, but it helps us obviously to keep our quality of animal higher.
And how long does that process take, that you kind of allow them to grow out and measure that success?
Okay, so our first cut is at weaning time. Like I said, we can only keep a few head, over the winter. So we make that cut. We go by looks, what their parents are, what their horn's doing at the time. And then something that's very important for us is we'll measure them at, when they're a year old, and we'll make another cut there. Like I said, we have early horn growth, so we kind of know where ours are going to be a little bit, at that age. And then we try to sell them, or if we're keeping them for ourselves, we promote them, watch real close. And by that fall, if we haven't sold them, unless they're an extremely outstanding bull, like Hangin Tuff, Big Stuff, Rex, usually we can't winter them the second year, so they'll end up in the meat market. Unless, like I said, they're an extraordinary animal, and then they obviously stay.
So how long did it take you all to figure out that your horn growth was quick enough that you could time those decisions? Because I know a lot of folks, I don't know that they have as much of a feel for their entire herd overall as horn growth. Some might be quicker, some might be slower. How did you figure that out?
Well, just by comparing us to other breeders, we, like, for instance, a lot of years we'd win showcases with our younger animals, but then, they'd fall behind a little bit as they got older. And just consistent measuring, every generation, every calf, and you just learn over the years. I think that's really important, to know your cows and know how they produce and what they produce, and keep records, measure often, keep records.
One of our goals right now is, and we've been working on for a couple of years now, is to combine our early growth with some of the genetics that develop later growth. So
Right.
the goal is to maintain the early growth and gain the late growth also to produce, top-notch 5 or 6 year.
Yeah, that's kind of what we're looking to do right now.
And how many years are you into that kind of test for yourself?
I would say, Brian, maybe 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I'd say 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Striving toward that goal.
Right. Been looking for, some outcrosses that have the later horn growth. Yeah, a perfect example of that. So Killer Soup, Damn to Kid Rock. So Mr. Timchek left this cow in his will to our daughter Tyler when he passed away. And this cow, she's real close, 90 inches with very lateral, tight horns, twist. But we knew this cow at a young age at Bill's, and she never really had much horn at all. He bought her really inexpensive, like $800, and she really didn't show much until she, I would say, 6 or 7 years old. And then she started putting on the horn and the twist, and that horn takes longer to get and to produce. So that was, like, I guess, the first eye opener for us, that there are truly, some that you have to wait years for certain genetics. Like, she was overkill, and other ones they say is like Jamaica's 50-50, that we learn, if we have offspring out of them. We have one now. She's the biggest cow in our herd, She's currently 97 and a half inches tip to tip, but she broke off 7 inches when she was just a 2-year-old. So she would be well over 100 by now. But she's sired by 50/50 and very correct, large cow. We wanted to show her futurities, but she just had no horn, as a yearling, 2-year-old, 3-year-old. And all of a sudden she started coming on. And like I said, now she's the longest horn cow in our herd right now. So just really got to be aware of that in genetics in your herd.
And what's her name, Mary?
That cow is M.C. Bitsy.
That's great advice. I appreciate you sharing that timeline and everything with us. Well, let's talk a little bit about some challenges and some solutions. So what challenges have you faced in maintaining such a high standard specifically with your bull breeding program, and how do you overcome those challenges?
Well, I'd say one of our biggest challenges is working on a tight budget and working with a small number of females and maintaining outcrosses. With a small herd, it doesn't take long to run out options for a bull from your own herd before you're going to breed sisters and daughters, etc. So we always need to be looking for that outcross that will work on our herd. That's why we spend so much time watching heats in our cattle and AIing. We just don't spend a large amount of money on one particular bull to cover the entire herd. With the number of females we have, it usually isn't cost effective. And even if we did, one particular bull isn't always a perfect match for every cow. So we will always utilize AI in our herd. We usually have, in the summer, we have 3 different pastures. There's an AI herd, and then we generally will run 2 bulls in the other 2 pastures.
And how many head are you all running today?
I would say we're in the low 30s for brood cows, high 20s to low 30s. That's how many cows we'll have a year. And then we have about 9 yearlings coming on.
And so talk to me a little bit more about the AI. Do you all use an external service for that? Have you taught yourself and gone through that education to handle some of it on your own? How does that work?
Luckily, we did live in a large dairy area. Most of the dairies went out of business. So yeah, I rely on them. We go through select sires and have a gentleman come out and AI them. At one point, we weren't getting good results and weren't getting people to show up on time. So Brian told me he wanted me to go to school to learn to do it. But I just feel that not doing it as consistently and as often as these guys do it, that my rates wouldn't be as good. Like you're dealing with $300 bull semen, and, you watch some of these guys struggle to get into them or whatever, and it's not always just a cakewalk. So I just feel they have more consistency and better rate of success, doing it all the time. But there will probably come a day that I'll have to do it. So we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
Well, I have a feeling I already know the answer to this one because you've touched on it a little bit, but do you worry at all when you're working on your breeding strategies to kind of stay ahead of industry trends or, ensure in a certain way that your animals will remain competitive in the market?
We don't really follow trends so much. We maintain our base herd with females that consistently outproduce themselves and mate them with the best bulls that we feel will make the best offspring, basically.
Well, Brian, do you have anything to add before we switch gears and talk a little bit about marketing and promotion?
One thing I would say, heavy believers in AI and some of the bulls that we have produced, there's been different people not wanting us to put semen on the market, but we feel pretty strongly to put semen on the market simply because that's how we got started, because people put their bulls on the market with semen, and that let us grow our herd. So we feel strongly to give the same opportunity to other smaller breeders, because some of these big bulls, small breeder can't afford to buy that bull. But if semen's out there in the market, they can improve their herd also by buying semen. So we're pretty strong believers in getting semen out there in the market and letting the small breeders have a shot at, producing better animals too.
Yeah, we wouldn't be where we are today for sure if it wasn't for use of artificial insemination.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because that, I think that's important. And do you all hear back a lot of times from those smaller breeders? Like, do you follow along their success they've had with your bulls and just, take pleasure in the fact that you're helping to grow their programs as well?
Oh, absolutely. We get a lot of feedback all the time. People sharing pictures and they're excited about, horn measurements and like where the herd's going and different things like that.
To us, some of these smaller breeders need the opportunity to be able to breed to the better bulls. And a lot of people's view is only breed your good bull to good cows. And I agree with that to some extent. But to prove a bull is to be able to breed to a mediocre cow and produce top-notch offspring.
Yeah, a lot of these guys will only put their top bulls with top cows, and you know what I mean? And I mean, lots of times that works, sometimes it doesn't. But like Brian said, the true test is when you put that bull on any cow that he can step her up, and she can really outproduce herself.
So are there any success stories you have from that of animals that you can share with us, their names or their breeding programs that you've seen that with?
And Kid Rock's an example of that. Breeding big stuff really stepped up that cow's offspring.
Like Brian said, definitely Kid Rock was a prime example of that. Mr. Timchek had a cow named Killer Soup, and he was currently using a bull that was a daughter of hers, or a son of hers, I'm sorry. So he asked us if he could bring her out and breed the big stuff. So that's what we did. And that's where Kid Rock came from. I mean, anybody that knows Kid Rock, he right now holds the world record for tip to tip and total horn. And that was really exciting for us to watch him raise this bull and the story behind him.
That's awesome. I wondered if he'd be one of the ones that came up.
Yeah.
Well, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about marketing and promotion. And I think that this next piece will be valuable maybe to breeders who haven't really gotten their feet wet yet in the futurities and the measurement competitions with animals that they've bred. So how important do you feel it is to get your bulls in front of people at those futurities and those measurement competitions?
We feel it's extremely important. I mean, it's the best advertisement there is. You have to get out there to the events, show your face and your cattle as much as you can. Like I said before, nobody would know us at all if we wouldn't have taken that first step in going to our first showcase. After we took him twice and then we sold him to Red McCombs, we came back a year or two later with 3 of his offspring. They all did very well. They all won bronzes for us. And that's kind of what really put us on the map. People saw we had a good bull, but then we brought back offspring of his and they're like, wow, they're really doing something here, And it also lets people put a face with your name in your program. And you can see what their programs look like as well. You could always learn from other people that you talk to. And then something else that's really important for me, especially in futurities, you think you have a good animal and you take them to the futurities. And for me, it's comparing our cattle to the other cattle and other programs that are out there. When they come in the ring, I just kind of like have a blank slate. And, the original, when they walk in the ring, that tells me how mine compare with other ones. Like, okay, it's not as good as I thought it was, or, oh my gosh, it looks really good. You know what I mean? And to me, that's an important tool.
Can you share any tips or strategies for other breeders looking to showcase their bulls at those types of events?
Yes. Be sure to bring your animal well-conditioned, not too fat or too thin, and clean. And don't bring an animal with poor temperaments. And one other thing that I feel is important, more people are doing this now, but be sure to hang pen signs with photos, pedigrees, and additional information on the animal, and make sure you include your contact info so people can get a hold of you.
Can each of you maybe share a favorite memory from a recent measurement contest or futurity?
Well, mine was definitely when Hangin Tuff won Ultimate Bull at the Horn Showcase the first year.
And what year was that, Mary?
I have to think about it. I'm sorry.
You're good. You're like me.
22?
2019, you think?
21 or 22, I believe.
I think it was 2019. He was born in 17, so okay, it was 2019.
Looks like she was right, Brian.
What's that?
I said it looks like Mary was right. You should know. I was right.
Yeah, yep, she is.
And then, of course, he went on to win it.
Time flies.
Yeah, he went on to win it a second time in 2020 as well.
Would you share that as your favorite memory, Brian, or do you have something different you want to share?
I'd say that's right up there. Probably the most memorable was whenever we first got started and Rex won the first time. But then the biggest milestone was probably whenever Hangin Tuff took Ultimate Bull.
Do you remember what year that was, Mary? Do you still have your list in front of you or no?
Let me look.
Go with 03 or 04.
Well, he was born in 04, so I believe it would have been in 2005, right, Brian? The first year we took him?
Yeah, I would say yes. Yeah, the first year we took him, yeah.
So that's been a while.
Yeah, and I mean, he was out of our first group of cows, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So that was really exciting right off the bat to get, something that good.
Are there any particular bulls from your program that you're especially proud of and why?
Hangin Tuff, we just love everything about him. His horn, color, temperament, conformation. I mean, it's hard to fault him in any way. And obviously, he was setting horn records and was only the second bull to ever cross the 100-inch tip-to-tip mark. Big stuff. He's big and thick and throws great color and temperament and is producing a tremendous amount of horn for us. And then Super X was our first. He stepped our program up in the beginning, and his genetics continue to help build our program, as all of our cows in our herd currently do trace back to him. And I guess as far as how our bulls impacted the market and what feedback we received from buyers and experts, we believe our bulls helped improve the longhorn industry as a whole by producing larger framed animals and increasing tip-to-tip and total horn while maintaining conformation. We do have a lot of repeat buyers. We get a lot of compliments on our cattle and have developed a bit of a following of our ranch. And to our surprise, people often rank our program right up there with the best in the industry. And we were told one time from a breeder that he'd never seen the number of awards that we got that come from such a small number of cows in our herd. So that really hit home to us. And then, of course, we were able to partner with some of the best breeders in the industry on MC Hangin Tuff.
So what advice would you give to other breeders who are kind of aspiring to achieve similar success with their bulls or their breeding programs?
Something that we tell people, you don't always take the biggest cow, like the 100-inch bull and the 100-inch cow, to make the biggest horn progeny. Doesn't always work that way. I mean, if it did, it wouldn't be any fun. Everybody would be doing it. And just breed to the best bulls in the industry and never lose sight that you're trying to produce the total package animal, not just one trait. And know your cows. Something I think else that sets us apart from other breeders, that we rarely buy anything. The cattle in our herd come from established lines that run generations deep. We know each family well and how they produce. For example, we tend to have fast early horn growth on our cattle. So if they don't measure up at a certain age, they just don't make the cut.
Would your advice differ at all, Brian?
No, that's pretty good.
So how important do you feel it is for breeders to balance tradition with innovation when they're really striving for excellence within the industry?
Tradition is the foundation of the longhorn industry. Even if the animals evolve to meet market demands, hopefully we don't lose sight or don't breed out the original traits that longhorns are well known for that made them great, like the disease resistance and the hardiness in pursuit of marketability. We need to be careful in that aspect.
From the Pasture by Hired Hand is presented by R3 Hilltop Ranch. Located in Chilton, Texas, R3 Hilltop Ranch has been breeding registered Texas Longhorns since 2006. What began as 3 heifers has grown into our current herd, which you can explore on our website at r3hilltop.com. We're passionate about loud colors, longhorns, and docile temperaments, but it's the easy-keeping, low-maintenance traits of Texas Longhorns that initially attracted us and continue to drive our herd growth. In addition to livestock, we proudly offer certified Longhorn beef products. Visit r3hilltop.com/beef to learn more. Thank you for listening and enjoy exploring our ranch online at r3hilltop.com.
Hey, if you love From the Pasture with Hired Hand, why not go check out my podcast, The Big Iron Podcast with Andrew Shigori, where we dive into the world of registered Texas Longhorns and what it means to be an agriculture entrepreneur in the modern world, with a little southern flair, of course. Find The Big Iron Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Do you sometimes feel like you're the only one who doesn't have it all figured out? Rural life can be isolating, but it doesn't have to be.
Welcome to Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, the podcast for women who are craving connection, laughter, solidarity, camaraderie, and just overall encouragement in your everyday life and dreams.
Each week, your hosts, Annalise, that's me, and Courtney will cover topics such as farm life, mom life, making money online, side hustles, hobbies, sharing on social media, jobs off the farm, and so much more.
Us rural gals need to stick together, so saddle up for some fun, real, and unsolicited advice and stories from our everyday farm lives.
Grab a drink. We're Ag's Most Okayest Farm Girls, and we're here to help. Listen wherever you find podcasts.
So let's talk a little bit about the future for Middlecreek. What are your goals coming up, and especially regarding your bull breeding portion of your program?
I guess just to keep producing more record horn in futurity winners, and with the bulls, just make sure that they're the total package, and most importantly, that they can reproduce that themselves, as far as horn, conformation, color, and temperament.
So are there any new bulls out there at your ranch that you're excited about that you can share with us? Because I know a lot of folks are like, oh, we can't talk about it yet. We can't talk about it yet. But you have to have at least one you can share with us, right?
Yeah, actually, we have a young brindle bull right now that we're watching closely. Currently, he's almost 4 inches above his sire Hangin Tuff for his age, which is just crazy to us. So for his age, he's the biggest horn bull that we've raised so far. And he's about 16 months old, I believe. And we also have another young bull that's very correct and colorful out of our well-known Awesome Grace cow that we're excited to get into the futurities and promote him as well.
Can you share their names with our listeners so they can go find them on your website?
Yes. The brindle bull with the big horns is M.C. Red Hot, and the other one is M.C. Pale Rider.
So now I have to ask, because I'm a sucker for brindle. Were you hoping and trying to get brindle, or was that just a great benefit of what you were?
I mean, we always love brindle, obviously, but yeah, our bulls just with big stuff and Hangin Tuff, we do get a lot of brindles, the strong brindles that come from both bulls. A good number of them will brindle.
Well, where can our listeners find more information about Middlecreek Farms and your bulls and your whole herd overall?
We have a website, www.middlecreekfarms.net, or they can always call me in chat. I love to talk Longhorns, 814-233-4886.
And so then I'd like to ask this final question to each of you, because I feel like you both have just a lot of knowledge perhaps we didn't fully tap into here. So are there any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you can share, particularly related to bull breeding before we sign off here?
Basically, I guess when looking for cows or bulls, choose ones that show that they consistently outproduce themselves. Using strong, consistent, proving female lines is very important as well. And then something I'll add, we didn't really touch on this very much, but we never went into this trying to produce bulls with the intent of selling and making money, but it was to improve our own program. Bulls are a tough market, but we've been very fortunate percentage-wise with the small numbers that we have to maintain on our property.
One thing I would add is everybody's pushing the heifer sex semen, and whenever they do embryos and stuff, they always want to use heifer sex because we're always looking for heifers. There's nothing wrong with dropping a good bull in the ground every once in a while too. You know what I mean?
Right. Absolutely.
Well, I think that's great advice. And I really appreciate you both taking the time to join us today. I know we've said a few times in this podcast, time flies, but I feel like you all have been in the industry, the same amount as us or longer. And it's been fun to watch your success and your growth and, your family grow up in the industry as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.